In today's episode, we're going to discuss 5 different things you should be looking for when you get matched with an opponent.
Bazooka Joe Valtellini!
When watching film and studying opponents, there tends to be 2 types of fighters. One who is really into the minor details and watches absolutely everything. The second type of fighter really won't watch anything at all. In my career, I was more of the second type of fighter. I fought guys with a lot of experience, a lot of times with over 100 professional fights where I had under 10. And for me, watching their film, I saw a lot of their knockouts and I saw how good they were. And at that point, I didn't know how good I was. So I wanted to stay mentally strong and confident, knowing that I would go in there and blast these guys out. But I did watch probably 1 or 2 of their fights. This way I can kind of gauge these 5 things. But at the end of the day, it really didn't matter to me because I knew I was going to make them fight my fight. But if you're fighting now and you're more of an analytical style fighter and maybe newer to fighting, it's okay to kind of want to break these details down and get to know and study your opponent. A lot of times, the coaches will do this work, and it's better to keep the fighter away from all the film study because it can get in the fighter's head, right? That's the job of the fight team and the coaches to plan and strategize. But it's also important the fighter know the kind of basic tendencies and what he's going against. The first thing is obviously the stance. You want to determine, are they orthodox, southpaw, or do they like to change? That's going to determine a lot of your strategies and your tactics for the fight. For example, in that open stance fighting, your rear side and your power side tend to play a little bit more favorable. You want to land your rear round kicks, your rear straight, because they're your more powerful weapon and it's open on your opponent. Are you going to circle inside to the power, or are you going to circle outside of the lead foot away from the power? The second thing has to be the positioning of the front foot. To me, that's one of the first things I look at because I'm a low kicker. Depending on their stance will determine how I attack the leg. For example, you'll see Muay Thai fighters who like to have their front foot pointing forward, more weight on the back foot, so they're very light so they can block low kicks very easily. So right away, I know I'm gonna have to pressure with my boxing, push them backwards to get weight on that lead leg in order to land the low kick. If I fight someone with a more traditional karate side stance, I enjoy that because it's harder for someone to block. Same thing with a boxer, because the heel is pointing out, it's hard for them to turn their foot all the way over to block the outside low kick. So I prefer that, and that's something I really look for. The third thing you're looking for is, are they a pressure fighter or more of a movement style fighter looking to counter? And that's going to determine the distance that you want to fight in. For example, I enjoy pressure fighting, so I get my opponents to move backwards so I can employ my strategy. If I fight another pressure fighter, they might meet me head to head, and that might change things up. If they're bigger, they're stronger, I might have to use the strategy of moving, drawing them in, because I don't want to get hit with the big shots. So depending where your advantages are in fighting, you want to determine the range and the distance you're going to put the fight in. And this way you can kind of create a game plan of where you want to place them. Ring control is an important concept in fighting. So if you look at a lot of my fights, I like to position my opponent in the corners or against the ropes so I can do my lateral checking and land my low kicks more effectively. The fourth thing I'm looking for is to see the type of striker they are. Do they like to favor their boxing, their kicks, or their clinch and knee? So if I know, for example, they want to clinch me, I might have to use a little bit more movement, keep my strikes a little bit longer, so that's going to affect my strategy for the fight. If they're more kickers, I might want to come forward, pressure with my hands, and kind of fight them in a range they're not comfortable with. If they're boxers, even better for me, because every time they punch, they put weight on that lead leg, and then I attack the leg. So that's something you need to watch for. The fifth and final thing you really need to keep an eye on is what type of strikes do they tend to counter with? Counter with kicks, hands, and which strike in particular. So, for example, if I'm in a shell and I'm getting hit, my reaction might be to swing with a big overhand right. So you need to see that. So when I'm fighting that person, I might need to stay long and I wait for that counter right hand so I could counter back. So knowing their counter tendencies helps you to strike, wait for that counter, block that counter, and attack again. So attack, block, counter back. After you have figured out those 5 different things, now is when you can really put the game plan together. You might even take it a step further. You might realize that 1, this fighter tends to fade as the fight goes on. All of their power is in the first 2 rounds of the fight. So in those first 2 rounds, you might decide to use more of your counters, your movement, keep the fight at longer distance. But as they fade, you might decide to pressure, keep bringing forward, continue to get them to fade. So you got to take these 5 things and really look at it in a deeper way. So the next time you're breaking down film and studying your opponent, make sure you take into account these 5 things. It's going to help you decide which distance is best to fight in, which strikes of yours will land, and also your opponent's tendencies, like what strikes do they want to counter with. This way you can evade them, block them, counter them, and stay safe. It's also important to understand that your opponent might watch this channel as well. He's improving, he's getting better and sharpening his skills. So as a fighter, you do need to learn how to adapt. And you have to do it being calm and relaxed. I've seen too many fighters get frustrated if game plan A doesn't work. Sometimes you have to go to B, sometimes to C in order to get the victory. But you have to be well prepared, training all year round to have comfort in changing between game plans, styles, and strategies. That's why martial arts is a lifelong skill, and we're here learning every single day.